Hello again, my name is Kris and this is my second podcast. So if you haven't listened to the first podcast, I suggest you do because this is what the second podcast is all about. First of all, I couldn't really fit in to 30 minutes my whole life story. It's just impossible. So this second podcast is really just elaborating on that and more specifically, those points of trauma. So again, if you did watch that first podcast, you'll see me get very emotional. And that was very, very significant because what I've come to understand is that past events have a really significant impact on how we behave in the future. So when I experienced that heartbreak of, me listening to my parents, and again, what that really was, it ruined my whole understanding of human beings because until that point, I had always trusted in my mother and father, as all children do. So that's why it was so significant and why it had such a negative impact on my future was because I thought at that moment that nobody can be trusted. You can't trust human beings. You can't trust your own mother and father. And, that actually got worse because more abuse really started to happen after that point. So you think that was the worst point. It got a lot worse from there. So because I didn't swim anymore. And as I said, I was, using drugs within a few days of having that emotional trauma. And what happened next was my parents, obviously, my mother specifically. So my mother specifically noticed a big change in my behavior. And admittedly, there was. I was no longer the same person. And, it's important for you to understand as well, when you start to take drugs, and you get addicted to drugs, you are no longer the person you were before because you've got a whole lot of driving forces that dictate your behavior. And that's why it's so good to be, talking about this retrospectively, knowing that I'm back to the person that I really love being. And that's the person who's not addicted to drugs. A drug addict and someone who's not addicted to drugs are two very different people. So as I said, my behavior started to change. It was obviously noticeable. And this obviously really upset my mother and father. But what really happened was that it was just too much for them to take. And my mum started doing these weird fucking things. So like for an example, my dad would get home from work and she'd just make up some story like, oh, Christopher's taken the car keys. And I remember this really significantly because it was just, I didn't want to swim anymore. In my defense, I was only trying to just be a normal teenager. You know what I mean? I wanted to have friends. I wanted to have social groups. I wanted to go out to parties. I wanted to experiment with fucking drugs and all that kind of shit. So, it was hard for me because I didn't really at the time think I was doing anything wrong. And obviously my parents had a very different view on that. But, she'd say things like, he's stolen the car keys. And of course I hadn't stolen the car keys. So it was just this infuriating environment that just caused so much more damage to myself. It was just hard to live in a place that you knew you were no longer welcome. And, this turned out to be true because I remember getting home one night and I saw these cop cars out the front of the house and I'm thinking, oh, fuck, what's going on? Anyway, as I'm walking up the path, I hear, oh, there he is. And I thought, oh, fuck, they're after me. So I bolt up through the backyard, climb to the fucking top of the biggest fucking tree and, they're outside and all of a sudden, the spotlights come on me and, begging me to get down and all that kind of thing. So I just thought, look, I can't fucking sleep in the tree all night. I don't think they're going anywhere. And after about 20 minutes, I fucking got down and was taken into, the back of the divvy van. And I actually wasn't put in the back of the divvy van. I was actually just put in the back seat of the car. I wasn't handcuffed or anything like that. And anyway, we just started driving. And, the police took me to Frankston Hospital. And it was really quite strange. I didn't know why I was at Frankston Hospital and anything like that. But anyway, I was put into a waiting room. And, I wasn't really told what was going on. I really didn't have any much of an idea. And I remember thinking after about an hour, why don't I just fucking leave? So that's what I did. I, got up, walked out, and, went to walk out the door, and a security guard grabbed me and he said, mate, you're not going anywhere. And I thought, fuck, okay, this is fucking weird. So anyway, obviously I, wasn't going anywhere. So I went back into this waiting room and obviously fell asleep and woke up, and it was a busy hospital and people were walking around. And anyway, a lady popped her head in. And she said to me, are you hungry? And I said, yes, I am. And I said, what's going on? Why am I here? And she said to me, someone's going to be here at about 11 o'clock. And, who was coming at 11 o'clock was the Department of Human Services. So I didn't really know what that meant at the time. But what happened is that a guy came to see me and he said, mate, we're looking for another home for you. You're no longer welcome back at your parents' place. And I can tell you at that time, I was relieved, because I won't go into all of the bullshit that happened there, but it was abusive. It was nasty and it was just unfucking necessary. And I can tell you what, when someone goes out of their way to make your fucking life hard, they're a fucking piece of shit. Okay? If someone is going out of their way to make your life fucking hard, they are a piece of shit. And this was exactly what my mother was fucking doing. And the thought of being in another home was actually a fucking relief. So that just gives you an indication of just how fucking unpleasant it was. So anyway, by this stage, they moved me to the Department of Human Services in Frankston, which is, I think it's where the corrections officers are now. But anyway, it was upstairs. It was on the second level. So anyway, it just comes into a fucking long day of waiting. And, the first day comes around and I actually slept in the office on the first night because they couldn't find a foster home on that first day. So I'm sleeping on the fucking couch in the Department of Human Service offices until the next day. And it wasn't until late the next day. It was about, 4:30, 5 o'clock. And the guy comes out to me and he says, mate, we've got you a new home. And he said, you're going to Narre Warren. And to be honest, at that time, I had no idea where fucking Narre Warren was. And, it's when I first discovered Fountain Gate. And the foster home that I was taken to was actually just at the back of Fountain Gate. And I can remember going to this place. And again, I remember saying, oh, mate, can I get a packet of smokes for the way? And he was good. He got me a packet of smokes and we headed out to Narre Warren. And I'll never forget the first time that I opened the door, and I was surprised at the lady who opened the door. She was actually, quite an attractive kind of younger lady. Now, I was 16 at the time. She was 26. So it was just this pleasant surprise opening the door. There was a young kid there. And, I opened the door and came inside and I met her boyfriend, this big, dude. And, it was just kind of bizarre, walking into, just imagine you've just been taken to fucking hospital. You spend the night in hospital, you get taken to the Department of Human Services, you spend the night at the Department of Human Services, you're not going home, and you're waiting for a family to take you in. And, and imagine just walking into that family and just kind of going, fuck, it was fucking weird. And, they're making dinner, and by this time it was obviously dinner time, and, I'm eating dinner, and I just kind of never forget that night. But why I'm talking about this, because it was significant. It was a significant time of my life where I never ever thought that I'd be fostered out of home. And, what was worse about this is that I nearly was killed in that foster home. Now, it wasn't long before I was smoking dope with that woman who opened the door. She was the first woman to, show me how to smoke a bucket bomb. And, we would always do this while he was at work, and, we'd hang out together, we'd go and see her friends, and, it got to the point where, we were driving around and we were looking for rental properties. Like, she wanted to leave this guy, she wanted to move in with me, and it was just crazy, and this all happened within, about kind of 2 to 3 months. And what happened is that the guy got wind of it, and one night we'd been out at this bowling place, and we'd come through the door, and I was just grabbed by the throat, held up with my whole body off the ground. I mean, I was only 16. I wasn't a big guy. I was a skinny little shit, really. And I was basically, he's fucking choking me. He's just screaming at me, fucking da-da-da-da-da. She's trying to fucking fight him off. It was a huge fucking nasty scene. Anyway, I managed to fucking break free. If the door hadn't been fucking left open, because again, we didn't have a chance to shut the front fucking door. So if that front door hadn't been open, I never would have got out. So anyway, I fucking bolt to the nearest fucking payphone. I call 000 and I tell them what's fucking happened. I get picked up, and guess what? I got taken to another foster family at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night in Cranbourne. And, waking up in that house in Cranbourne and just thinking, fuck, this is just fucked. I had my whole life, you know what I mean? It was just something I was just like, nah, this is fucked. Anyway, I remember asking to call home. I said, I need to call home. And I called up my home, and my mother or sister answered the phone, and I just said, look, can I come home? Anyway, to my surprise, my mum and dad both drove and picked me up. But nothing had really changed. The animosity, the resentment, the anger that my mother specifically had with me hadn't gone away. And, my habits certainly hadn't changed. So it wasn't long before I was at a mate's place, a long time, we were best mates from kindergarten, really. So a long-term friend. And, I remember my dad coming over and saying, mate, can I have a chat? And we all went up, me, my mate, his mum, and my dad. We sat up and had a meeting, and basically, he said, look, he's just not welcome back at the home. Would you mind looking after him? And of course, this woman was just a saint. And, I said that, look, that was fine. So, this was kind of a nice part, because it was just like I was back with my friend. I was living with a mate. That was kind of cool. We were both the same types of people. I was still in Mount Martha, so I wasn't, miles away. So it was like it just felt really nice. And we just spent the next 12 months, doing a lot of drugs, spending a lot of time in the shed and not doing a lot. But, really, so that was a huge, big part of, what really shaped my decision making. Because again, not being wanted, not feeling good enough, not feeling loved, being abandoned, all of these things played a major role in shaping, basically my personality. I really find it difficult to trust people. Can you understand why? I find it really difficult to kind of, believe what people are saying. And this caused so much fucking drama for me, especially with females. And I've done videos about this before, but because the first woman that I ever loved, which is my mother, because she turned out to be so horrible, and because I thought that I could trust her and I couldn't, it it just ruined so many of my relationships. And, I abused a lot of women and men, because I just didn't trust you, and I was so scarred, and, it's just been, and again, this is why I'm talking about it, because, I understand why I became an addict. I understand why I became an addict, and I want you to be able to understand, why you're an addict. Because we don't just decide one day that we're going to be fucking drug addicts. I don't think anyone really ever signs up. Do you want to be dependent on drugs? Do you want to be a needy little bitch? Do you want to fucking, fuck your health? Do you want to ruin your relationships? Do you want to fuck your family over? Do you want to spend heaps of time in jail? Do you want to spend heaps of time? I mean, who's fucking signing up for that? Fucking no one. So for me, what's really helped me is going back in time. And I think that it's really important that, if you're suffering from addiction, that, you can go back in time, and a really, easy way, or a simple way to do this is to break your life up into chapters, and I kind of go, if you've got a memory before you went to, primary school, start from the earliest memory you've got and kind of go, like pre-primary school, primary school, high school, the next 5 years, kind of do it in 5-year blocks. And, you think about the most significant emotional events, good and bad, and this takes time. It takes, like considered time to sit down and think about, like, what are the things that shaped me? Because there are things that have shaped you that perhaps you're even unconscious of. And, this hasn't all been bad, let me tell you, so why it hasn't been bad is because in some ways it made me become financially successful. In fact, in all ways, it made me become financially successful. And why that is because I never felt good enough. And something that I knew that every person kind of respected or took notice of was money. You can't ignore the rich dude. You can't ignore that fucking flash car driving past. You can't ignore the successful, wealthy guy. And that was something that I started to begin to know that I had something driving me internally. And I wasn't quite aware that it was my childhood and those specific events. But I knew that there was something that was driving me to want to succeed, to want to impress people, to want to be liked, because I didn't feel liked. I didn't feel respected, and I wanted to fill that void. And, I was doing it obviously with drugs, and I was certainly doing it with financial success. So, that's why I was, not only a drug addict, but I was also a self-made millionaire in my early 20s. So I bought my first property when I was 22. I bought 4 after that. I had started businesses. I'd made, for those of you who don't know, before I went bankrupt, I had a house in East St Kilda. I had a townhouse in Glen Huntly. I had 2 apartments, one in St Kilda and one in Elwood. And not only did I have those, I had previously started a business, Big Bear Cafe, that, turned over about $500,000 in its year of trading. I sold it after 18 months for $250,000. I had bought and renovated apartments, and one of those apartments, I made $180,000 in 2 weeks, okay? Because I got access to the property during the settlement period, and I went in, measured everything up, So by the time that it settled and I got the keys, that I already had, just took 2 weeks to kind of fit it out. And when I got it revalued, I'd made $180,000. So, it was incredible to know that, and why I guess I didn't start getting the help that I knew I needed was because it came with benefits. Like I actually knew that there was something driving me to make me be wealthy, and I was wealthier than anyone I knew. I mean, I kind of never graduated from high school, but you can imagine going to, again, there's movies about it. So, I kind of used to imagine going to my the class reunion, and I can remember going, fuck, imagine if I actually had graduated, and went to the class reunion, and you turn up in your fucking Porsche. You've got the business that's so fucking busy that everyone fucking knows. You're wealthy. You've got a beautiful partner. You've got beautiful kids. This was something that I kind of, can you see how it wasn't all bad? In some ways, it was actually really good. And this is why it's so important to kind of understand what's driving your behavior. Because again, once you do that, you kind of can understand why you are the way you are. And that's been really fucking helpful for me. Why do I do the things that I used to do? And when you kind of understand it, you kind of go, fuck, that's why I did that. So it wasn't all bad, but having said that, it was a very one-dimensional way, or a shallow way of kind of valuing myself. Because again, the problem when I got wealthy was, first of all, it actually made the people who I was trying to impress resent me more. So my own father was too embarrassed to come to my house. And because he had 3 grandsons that he hadn't met, and I kept on saying, Dad, this is the address, come round, I've got 3, your grandsons would love to meet you. Just kept on putting it off. And, the kids were kind of getting older. So years went by, right? And I finally ran into him at one of my other brother's house. And I said to him, are you too embarrassed? Are you ashamed to come to my house? Now, remember, the reason why I said this was because he'd often call me a fucking loser. He'd often call me as a young kid, you'd amount to be nothing. You're a fucking no-hoper. You'll be this, you'll be that. Right? So, I forgave him for that. Because I said to him, are you too embarrassed to come to my fucking house? Are you too embarrassed to fucking walk past the fucking Porsche? Are you, what the fuck? Why haven't you fucking come to my house? You've got grandkids that would love to fucking meet you. And he said, you're right. And I'll give him that. He said, you're right. I am. And I said, well, fucking get over it, mate. You've got kids there. They want to meet you. So anyway, that was kind of nice to have that. But really, it's been so nice to be able to go back in time and understand and be able to forgive myself and understand myself and kind of work out why the fuck I am the way I am, or I did what I did. So financial success was something that, again, was just like a drug. Like I was addicted to money, like I was addicted to drugs. Money helped fill a void that was lacking in me, the feeling of not good enough, the feeling of, all that kind of shit. So money helped me, kind of feel better, but ultimately, what happened is that I was a very successful, wealthy drug addict. And I had this epiphany. I had this moment where I was sitting in the Porsche. I was probably living in the Porsche at the time, that's what I did. I would have a beautiful home, beautiful kids in the house, and yet I'd be living in my car because I just wanted to use drugs all the time. Okay, so by me in the car, I'd just be using fucking drugs all the time. And I can remember just thinking, it hasn't worked. And you're thinking, what hasn't fucking worked? I'm thinking, well, I've got the Porsche, I've got the business, I've got the money, I've got the drugs. Why am I so fucking miserable still? And that's what I want you to know. That happiness comes from the inside out. I was so obsessed with trying to fill the voids within myself with drugs, with assets, with things, with clothes. And it never worked. It was this temporary thing. And, this will be another podcast, but, really what I've come to understand and know is that, as I said, happiness comes from the inside out, and you will never, ever, ever, be fulfilled and be truly happy unless it comes from the inside out. So you can spend so much money on, trying to buy happiness. You can spend so much time doing drugs, trying to feel happiness. But happiness is something that comes from the inside out. So thank you for listening. I will be back next week with another podcast. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will speak to you next week.